I so appreciate our musicians. I appreciate because they set the stage, they set the mood. And I so appreciate my iPad. Because it has jokes. At a pilot's training in the Air Corps, they taught us, always try to keep the number of landings you make equal to the number of takeoffs you make. And little Tommy had a sweet tooth. He went to a birthday party, and when he came home, his mother said, I hope you didn't eat a second piece. Didn't ask for one. He said, no, Mama, I didn't ask for a second piece. But I told Miss Smith that that recipe was so good that if she would give it to me, I'd get you to make one for me. And she gave me 2 more pieces. So this week is the 8th week in a series of 8 about living as the flow of God's good. Not just living in the flow, but being the flow of God's good. And we talked about, in each of these weeks, we've talked about a practice that we would take on and practice. There are 8 of them. And we said that for this to work, we have to do it in a particular way. Does anybody know what that way is? Consistently. And what? Simultaneously. You know, we can't just do one, we've got to do them all. If we want to live in that expandedness of being God's flow. And so I'm going to quickly run through them. First one was inspired giving. You know, you always get the hard one out first. Talked about tithing, about giving to where you're spiritually fed. And we said that tithing is 10%. And why? Who knows? It's easy math. That's why when we go to the restaurant, we give our wait staff 20%. It's easy to calculate. We give to where we are spiritually fed. Now, I hope that you're spiritually fed here and you choose to give here, but for spiritual law to work, you give to where you're spiritually fed. And that may look different at different times to different people. My cough drop just went down the wrong way. The second thing we said is that we have to discover our divine purpose. We have to get aligned with our divine purpose. And we talked about that you and I all have one divine purpose in common. And that one in common is to know our own spiritual divine nature. To know God. To express God. To be God in this world. And then we said that each one of us has a unique divine purpose. And we said that there were some attributes about that. That one of the attributes might be that whatever your divine purpose is, it will help and serve other people. Albert Schweitzer said, you will know happiness when you are in service. And we said to find that divine purpose, if you don't know what it is, it's never too late to find a divine purpose. There's always a divine purpose. Even if you've finished the divine purpose that you thought you came here to be, there's always another divine purpose. You're never too old to have a divine purpose. And to find that divine purpose, we pray. We go inside and we just ask, okay, God, that lives in me, Spirit that lives in me, what is it that is mine to do? And we talked about that Edwin Gaines said in her book about prosperity, that when you're looking at your purpose, you might look for those activities that make you feel joy when you're really having a good time, when you don't even notice time. Inspired giving, aligning with your divine purpose. And the third was release and let go. And we talked about letting go of our clutter in our homes. It inspired Suzette to go home and do a garage sale. And she gave us about $500 for our building fund. Yay, God. Yay, God. But we talk not only about the physical clutter, that there's some mental and emotional clutter that we have in our lives, and that we have to let go of that as well. Told a parable from Krishna who was going to give his subjects immortality. And he said, hold out your hands and I will give you immortality. And his subject says, but we have mangoes in our hands. And Krishna said, well, put them down. And they said, well, give us immortality and then we'll put them down. Life doesn't always work like that. Sometimes we have to let go of our good to get that which is better. The next week was forgiveness. I mean, it's pretty hard for even me to remember all of them. When we embrace this practice of forgiveness, we give up holding something against someone else or against ourselves. And when we do that giving up, that frees the energy to flow through us. It frees our energy to do other things. One of the things that we talked about was that Edwin's story about changing her story, that she had to let go of having been abused. And she had to take on a new story, and that new story is, I am a woman of power, and I know how to use it. Yes, I had these things happen in the past, but I'm no longer a victim. I am a woman of power who knows how to use my power. So we're asking for each of us to look at our stories and say, what is it that's my new story? We have a perfect example here, right here in our midst. Our friend Sheila. I love Sheila. And for those of you who know her, she hasn't spent any time saying, but I had a stroke. She's here, she's coming to church, she's participating, she's doing every day the things she needs to do to get better. She's let go of the story of being a victim. And so some of us have a victim story that we need to let go of. One of the things we talked about is telos, and telos is the big idea behind everything. And the telos for everybody is that you and I are always doing what we believe will make us happy. And so there are times in our lives when we are at a cross point with someone and we don't know, why did they do that? What were they thinking? They were doing that because that's what at that time they thought would make them happy. And sometimes we can look at it and we think, oh my gosh, you thought that would make you happy. The other thing we said about forgiveness is we know our forgiveness is taken when we can look back and say, I really wish that circumstance hadn't happened. But you know, I am grateful for the lesson I learned. Look where I have come since then. That gets us all the way back to this next week was faith. We talked about faith. In Hebrews, faith is the substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. And we talked about that you and I, we all have faith. Anne talked about it this morning in her meditation. We all have faith that when we breathe in, there's going to be air. In fact, you and I have pretty much faith that we are going to breathe in, don't we? And that we're going to breathe out. And last week when it was so rainy, didn't all of you have faith that we would get our pretty weather back? We knew it because we live in Florida. We talked about needing to have faith in three things. Faith in the goodness of life, in the goodness of spirit, the goodness of God. And here at Unity we say God is good when? All the time. We talked about having faith in our own divine nature. And having faith that spiritual law works in our life and that we can work that law. The next week we talked about naming our good, figuring out those things that we should do next, making a list, writing down what we want, writing down our goals, and being clear that it's okay to do that. Not feeling guilty when we have a goal that looks lofty. Les Brown said, shoot for the moon, and if you don't make it, you'll still be among the stars. And I don't know how many times in our lives, we may shoot for something and not quite make it, but we are so much further along than we were before. We talked about the Olympic divers that dive off those high platforms, and that every time they go up there, they have fear. But they step off anyway. They dive off. So that's what setting our goals does for us. It takes us to that edge. And last week, we talked about having determination and persistence in using these. And the reason that's important is because if you use them inconsistently, you get inconsistent results. So if we're persistent, we get persistent results. Originally, when I set this up, persistence and determination was going to be the last lesson in the 8 weeks. But then I realized it's Thanksgiving. So today I needed to talk about gratitude. So our 8th practice is the practice of gratitude. I had some moments when I went to get some water, and when I came back in, to walk in and hear that, thank you. I mean, the energy in this room was resonating and vibrating at a different level. It was great. So today, we're talking about gratitude. We gave out gratitude journals. I think there's probably 2 or 3 floating around that were never picked up. So if you didn't get one, find one for you. If you're coming to Wednesday night service, would you bring your gratitude journals with you? You're not going to be put on the spot. Gratitude. Another word for gratitude is appreciation. Now, as a CPA, I totally understand the word appreciation because I know the term depreciation and appreciation. Depreciation is when the value of something drops, and depreciation is when the value of something increases. Now, isn't it interesting that when we give gratitude, when we're grateful, that the value of the things in our lives that we're being grateful for, their value increases. There's a parable in the Bible that Jesus tells. And it's the parable of the talents. Remember that parable? There's a rich landowner and he's going away, and so he wants to have someone take care of his affairs and his money. And so he divides it up. And they call it talents, but for our benefit, we can just say business, money, whatever in your mind, his affairs. And he gave 10 pieces of his business for one person to administer. 10 parts of money. He gave someone else 3 and someone else 1. Well, time passes and the rich landowner comes home and it's time for an accounting. And he calls those stewards to him. And he asked the one that he gave the 10 to, he said, what is it? What happened? And the steward says, well, look what I did. Look how I expanded your interest. And the landowner says, good, wise, and faithful steward. More will be given to you. And the one that he had given 3 to came forward and he said, well, look what I've done. Good and faithful servant. More will be given to you. And the third one came forward and said, I was afraid, so I hid the talent. You know, I put it in a can and I stuck it in the ground. Guess they didn't have cans. Put it in a bag and stuck it in the ground. And here is that talent bag. Here is that portion of your business. Here is that portion of your fortune. All preserved, but it didn't grow. And we all know the next line. Because that talent is taken away. And this is what Jesus says. For unto every one that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not, even that which he hath shall be taken away. Wow. And we think, well, I don't want to live in a world like that. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. There is a great truth that you and I don't want to accept sometimes. And that is, whatever is in our life is there by right of consciousness. Take a deep breath. Whatever is in my life is there by right of consciousness. Say that with me. Whatever is in my life is there by right of consciousness. And if you have not by right of consciousness, spiritual law. Take a deep breath. And so you ask me, well, Beth, what about the children that are born ill? What about the children who are starving? I don't know. I don't know and understand the grand picture, the grand scheme. I can't in my human mind, I can't reconcile that. But I know the spiritual law. Wherever I am, whatever's going on, I am here by right of consciousness. And I am so grateful for that. I am so grateful for that. Because I remember the first time I started hearing about that. I remember when I was a single mom and I was really grasping and grappling with these spiritual principles, and I read, oh, if I do these practices and I work on myself, I change my consciousness and my life has to change. Yay, God, I have some power. that empowers you when you catch it. That wherever I am, I'm there by right of consciousness. And by my consciousness now, I get to affect tomorrow. You and I don't control the future, but we certainly control how we experience the future by right of consciousness. And so, there are days when I recognize that what I am thinking and what I am saying would not equal the circumstance I want in my life. When I get in that oh poor me, or things aren't working right, or I don't like the government, or anything. I don't like what somebody says. Anytime I get in that kind of place, I can go and I can find an inspirational story that will move me out of that place. It's one of the great things about being ministers. We look for inspirational stories. And I remember an inspirational story that I learned way before I became a Unity minister. I read a book, don't even remember the book, about Corrie ten Boom. Corrie ten Boom was a Christian missionary. I don't know if missionary is, evangelist maybe would be a better word. Corrie ten Boom and her sister Betsy hid Jewish people from the Nazis during World War II. And they were arrested and taken to a concentration camp, Ravensbrück. And conditions there were very bad. Somehow they had managed to get in there with a Bible. And they were reading in the Bible, and Betsy read, for whatever's going on, be thankful for it. And Betsy said, we need to be thankful for the fleas. And Corrie ten Boom says, no, I couldn't hardly do that. But Betsy insisted. And so over the next months, they were thankful. And something unusual happened. The guards were not coming into their barracks. They weren't being brutalized. They were able to have prayer services, to read the Bible. Later, they found out that the guards were not coming in their barracks because they didn't want to get fleas on them. God, the spirit of the intelligent spirit of the universe, divine intelligence, whatever your name for this creative force is, can use anything for good. And you and I get to remember that. We get to remember that no matter where I am and what's going on in my life right now, I get to change. I get to have an effect on. And the very first way we do that is being happy for what we have right now, in this moment. So think of something in your life that you might have been complaining about yesterday. And give thanks for it. I have such a hard life. I have to give thanks that when I went to buy a car, they didn't have a red one, and I had to get a blue one. That's what I was thinking about yesterday. I was driving down the street and seeing all these red cars and saying, I wanted a red car. I wanted a red car. I wanted a red car. I got a new car. It's blue. We laugh about that. But I recognized that yesterday I was getting pretty sick and tired of my blue car. I don't have 1,800 miles on it yet. And I was already thinking about how do I get a red car. I am grateful for my blue car, God. I am grateful. I'm grateful because it's turned out to be a story I can use this morning. God can use anything for good. This is a quote from Mike Dooley in A Note from the Universe. A dream manifestation workaround for those tired of visualizing, giving thanks, and acting as if is to love your life so greatly, exactly as it is, that you become a total magnet for more, more, more of all you could ever love. You love magnet, the universe. Love your life exactly like it is. Give thanks. In other words, accepting, embracing, and loving the present, warts and all, puts you and puts me in a higher vibration. It gets us off of 88.6 and up to 107.3. Being grateful for right now, loving right now. In 28 Laws of Attraction, author Thomas Leonard writes, you can't change the future, although things you do now will affect it. You can't change the past, although things you will do now will unlock its grip upon you. So the past and the future are too important to ignore, but the present is much, much bigger and more interesting and more powerful than either one. It is what is. The less emphasis you give to the other two, the past and the future, the more control you take over your own reality. We have the sweetest little dog, Lexi, and she was a rescue dog, and nothing would have it. Joan Crutcher had rescued this dog, and nothing would have it, but Gerald and I were going to have this dog. Somehow or other, saying, no, I don't need another dog, Joan convinced me, and I have another dog. When we got Lexi, she was not, she wasn't, I can't say that she was any happier about having a new home than we were to have a new dog. It was lukewarm at best. But she went to sleep that night, and the next morning when she got up, we were her new best family. That's what you and I have to do. We have to say, oh, okay, this is my reality and I love it. This is my day. Rather than thinking about the past or the future, right now we're here. And so I have affirmations for us to close with. And so if you'll take a deep breath and close your eyes. Let my words be your words. Rather than thinking about the past or future, right now, here I am. I am breathing. I have life. It's this moment. The power is here and now. And so I choose to do all I can with what I have where I am. Every morning I give thanks for all that I am and for all that I have. At the end of each day, I take a moment to reflect and be grateful. Being grateful for what I have brings more abundance into my life. Every day I am becoming more and more grateful for what I have in my life. I appreciate my life more than ever. Every day I give thanks for all that blesses my life. I give thanks for all that I have in my life. Every day I give thanks for my wonderful life. I say thank you for what I want to see more of in my life. Every day I thank the universe for showing me the way to my dreams. I thank the universe for the qualities and the talents that make me so unique. Every morning I give thanks for all that I am and for all that I have. Every evening I give thanks for all the blessings in my life. Every step forward in my life deepens my gratitude for all things. And so it is, and so it shall be. I am so grateful that I found unity. And I am grateful that I live in a country that at some point in its history recognized the very most spiritual thing was the ability to say thank you.